She was the first singer to top Billboard's dance charts, earning her the moniker the Queen of Disco. She scored hits with Never Can Say Goodbye, Honeybee, and Reach Out, I'll Be There. But nothing will ever approach the success of her disco anthem, I Will Survive. She has survived, persevering through poor management, personal tragedies, and a faltering career. But she credits the Lord with guiding her through it all and bringing her back to a place of peace and success. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on InnerVIEWS, our conversation with Grammy Award winner Gloria Gaynor. How do you define disco music?
Disco music, how do I define it? Well, it's upbeat, it's positive, at least mine is, and it's invigorating.
Yeah?
Yeah.
In the 80s, it was the death of disco.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think the music ever went away?
No, I always say disco music has always been alive and well and living in the hearts of music lovers around the world. It's simply changed its name to protect the innocent. Or the not so innocent.
But now it's come back, and it seems to have and there's a nice feeling in people when they hear of disco and they think of that era.
That era, yeah.
For you, does it have that nice feeling too?
Yeah, because it was a time of togetherness. We'd kind of gotten away from the me generation so much. People were dancing together on the dance floor, getting concerned with one another, interested in each other. Disco music set common ground for people across the board, at every nationality, every race, creed, and color, every age group. It's the first and only music that's ever done that.
Yeah.
So it does bring back a warm and fuzzy feeling for me.
Now, a lot of people think overnight sensation. You did I Will Survive, and there it was. You were a star. Yeah. There's a long story before that, and a lot of hard work that went into it. Yeah. When did you first get interested in music?
Well, I first got interested in music when I was a kid. When I graduated from high school and they asked you, what did you want to be? I said a teacher or a singer. And so, of course, I've become a singer first. But getting involved in music was probably a little late for me because I lived in Newark, New Jersey. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. Didn't have any real inlets to the music business. Didn't know what to do, where to go. New York wasn't that far, but for me it was a world, a whole completely different world. And how do you get there, and what do you do when you get there? Who do you go and see? So it was a little bit difficult for me. I ended up winning a music contest that had someone take me into New York and introduce me to Johnny Nash. Where I did my first recording.
Now, before we get into the recording and all of that, you mentioned being a teacher was one thing you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And from knowing your story, your mom really believed you and your siblings, all needed to be educated.
Yes.
And that was something new in your family up to that point.
Yeah, right. Well, none of my brothers graduated from high school. They all got their GEDs in the armed forces. They all went to the armed forces right out of, like about 17, 18 years old. They went into the armed forces because they hadn't graduated from high school, recognized that my mother had tried to tell them, you're not going to be able to get a job, you're not going to be able to do anything with your life. And so they went into the armed forces and finished their educations there, finally doing what Mom had always told them all along. But I stayed in and I graduated from high school. Unfortunately, I didn't go to college because we were poor and I couldn't afford it. And the other unfortunate thing was that I had high school counselors who didn't tell me there were other ways that I could go to college. I didn't know that. Yeah. So I'm doing it now.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you studying?
Yeah, I'm going for a bachelor's degree in behavioral science at the moment. I'll probably go for my master's as well.
Explain why that's important to you. You've had your success. You've had a career. Why does education still hold on to you?
Well, teaching still... I was born a teacher. I found out I was born a teacher. I can barely talk for more than 5 minutes without teaching something, even if it's a subject the listener already knows. But it's who I am. So what I want to do now is open a healing, learning, and recreational center for teenage parents, where I will just teach them about life because they haven't had the opportunity to learn these things.
Oh, that's wonderful. So now, okay, I'm going back in time again. Also, another part of your family that's interesting to me is that your grandmother, more so, very into religion. Very stern woman, but into religion a lot.
Right.
But then your mom didn't carry that through in the same way.
Right. Because my grandmother was so religious, my mother was inundated with church. And so she made a silent vow that when she had children, she would make them go to church. And she did make them go, make us go, and so we didn't go. Later on in life was when I began to, what I realized was that even though my mother didn't make us go to church because she had been inundated with church, it was a part of who she was. So she taught us the principles and the values of a Christian. Yeah. And that's what we grew up with. And that steered me through my young life and steered me probably to Christ in a later time in life.
So you get into New York now. The music world is opening up for you. Surprising? Shocking?
Well, I think I was too busy being happy about it to be surprised or shocked.
That's the most honest answer I've ever had to a question like that.
I was just ecstatic that I was at last doing what I wanted to do, and people were asking me about success. And I've always said that, as far as I'm concerned, the very first time that I was paid to sing, I was successful.
Yeah.
Because that is the meaning of success. Being able to make your living, or better still, design a life through what you love to do. There aren't a lot of people who can say that. Yeah. So I am truly blessed to be able to say that I have lived my life and designed my life through what I've loved doing, and that is performing. I love performing.
And I want to stay there, but I just remembered another story, too, that I have to go back to. Your neighbor overheard you singing.
Yeah.
And that was how your big break actually first happened.
Well, what happened was I was singing in the basement, not in the basement, under the stairs on the first floor, just standing there singing. I probably was waiting for some of my friends to come along. And the neighbor was coming down the stairs, and she looked over the banister and said, "Gloria, was that you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I thought that was the radio." So I thought, I must sound pretty good here, because I'm sounding like Frankie Lyman. I was singing the song, Why Do Fools Fall in Love?
Yeah.
And so that therein started my desire to be a singer.
There was another story that I remember. A gentleman lived above you and would walk back and forth, and when he stopped walking, you would sing so he could hear you?
Exactly. I actually was babysitting for a friend of mine, and when I began to hear these footsteps in the afternoon, at that time in my life, I just wanted to be heard. I just wanted someone to know I could sing, because I have 5 brothers who all sang, but I couldn't be a part of their group because I was a girl, So I wanted somebody to know I could sing too. And when I was following these footsteps, and that person would stop and walking, I would stop and sing, knowing if I could hear them, they could hear me. It was true, because a couple of weeks later, I'm in a nightclub with my brother, and they called me up to sing. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a young lady in the audience here. She's got a wonderful voice. I only know her first name, which is Gloria, but if we give her a nice round of applause, maybe we can get her up to sing a number. And I went up and sang, and afterwards he brought the band over to me, told me, first of all, that the reason why he knew me was because he was the person who was walking in the apartment upstairs. He owned the club. He'd heard my girlfriend call me as I left the building one day, which is where he got my first name. And the band was having problems with their singer and was looking for a new singer. So great opportunity, right place, right time. Yeah. It all just kind of worked together.
That's amazing, too. It's just, the happenstance of it all. Mm. And then, of course, they always say, even if that happens, if you don't have the talent, nothing's going to come of it.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so you get into a band.
Yes.
And now you're the girl singer in a band. Mm-hmm. As your star starts to rise, trouble with the rest of the band?
Well, yeah, because the record company wanted a singer. They were looking for a singer. And they weren't interested in the band. They wanted to record I Never Can Say Goodbye, which was a song that the band and I had been performing together. The band had actually arranged it differently than Isaac Hayes, who had recorded it, and differently than Michael Jackson, who had also recorded it, and both of them had hits with it, so they made it different, and the record company liked the arrangement. They just didn't want the band. I mean, it was a four-piece band, and it was difficult because they couldn't understand that a four-piece band wasn't enough to make a recording. And if they did come into the studio, they were going to have to play it differently because in the performances, they've been trying to make up for all these other instruments that were now there that they didn't need to make up for, so they were overplaying. They didn't get it. And there was a lot of resentment there.
How do you handle that as a person going back into that? I mean, I can understand if suddenly you were lifted out of it and you could move on, but you're still working with these guys.
Right.
You have to go back there as your record is playing. And how did you handle it as a person?
Well, one of the things that I did to pave the way a little bit smoother was that I insisted that the record company give them credit for their arrangement. So they did that. And so their name was on the record, even though they weren't able to play on the record. And that made it just a little bit easier for them. And I insisted on, as I performed for the shows that the record company had arranged for me through their agency, I insisted that they be my band.
Yeah.
So that made it just a little bit easier. And then one by one, they just fell away because they weren't able to do the traveling. They were married. They had their families who didn't want them on the road all the time and away from them. So they just fell away one at a time. And eventually I moved on to another group.
For success, what do you think you've had to give up?
Give up for success?
Yeah. You talk about they had families, so they stopped touring. So they lost that opportunity. Is there anything you had to give up to keep it going?
Well, I don't think so, because I've been wise enough through my mother, sharing her wisdom with me, and me being the type of child to receive it and heed the things that she told me. I made choices. I didn't make sacrifices. I believed that if you make sacrifices, you're eventually going to regret them. Yeah. So I made choices, and the choices were not mutually exclusive from other things that I wanted in my life that I didn't get, such as children. It had nothing to do with the fact that I was a singer. It just didn't happen for me. So I made choices. So I don't really think there's anything I've given up to be a singer. Yeah. And I'm very pleased to be able to say that.
Yeah. Tell me a little about Honeybee.
Honeybee was my first recording. Actually, it was my first nationally and internationally known recording, because I did have another recording with Johnny Nash that hardly anyone knows about. But which is She'll Be Sorry.
Okay.
Kind of works. But the first nationally known single was Honeybee, and that was a song that was written for me by Melvin and Mervyn Steele, a couple of writers, brothers, who had been chosen by Clive Davis, who first signed me to Columbia Records, to write that song for me. So that was my first single recording on Columbia Records, the first nationally heard and known single.
Yeah. Okay, now I have to ask, Substitute was supposed to be the hit.
Yeah.
But something else called I Will Survive kind of came around.
Yeah,
how did that happen?
Well, Substitute was chosen by the record company as the A-side recording because the president of Polydor at the time had come over from England, where he'd been president of Polydor there and had a successful hit with a song called Substitute with a group called Clout. He wanted to repeat that success here in the United States, and he asked me to help him do that. Well, me and my management team chose a team called Freddie Perrin and Dino Fakaris to do the recording for me, and they said they'd be pleased to do it if they could write the B-side. So after speaking to me about the kinds of lyrics that I like, the kind of subject matter, they chose I Will Survive. And when I read the lyrics, I thought, what are they, nuts? They're going to put this on the B-side of what?
Yeah.
You know.
And when you did that, you hadn't heard the music yet, too. It was just
I hadn't
lyrics,
heard the
right?
music. I just read the lyrics. I recognized immediately, this is a timeless lyric. There is nobody from the beginning of time till the end of time that has not or will not be able to relate to a song like that. Yeah. Well, these lyrics, I mean, forget about it. It's the human spirit. The song celebrates the tenacity of the human spirit.
Yeah.
And that is timeless. So we worked really long and hard to have that song removed, well, turned over, so to speak.
How do you do that when you've got the suits telling you, no, we know this business better than you do? And you're the singer who's out there doing the song and you know the reaction people are giving you.
Well, you recognize that those reactions from the public are the ones that really are the choices that we all need to listen to.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones we're performing for. They're the ones we're recording for. They're the ones we're in business for, to satisfy their wants, their needs, their desires, their musical tastes, all of that. It's all for them. So if you're not going to please them, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
So we just really worked hard. We took it to Richie Kazor at Studio 54, who was a very popular DJ at the time. He played it. The audience immediately loved it. This is unheard of in New York history, music history. Nobody likes anything immediately. You don't have to be inundated with it. Can't get it out of your mind, and then eventually you go to the store and buy it. But they immediately loved this song.
Yeah.
And so he gave it to other DJs around New York. The public began to call and request it from radio stations because now they want to hear it on the drive to work and on the drive home and in their homes. And the record companies, the radio stations had to call the record company and say, where's this record? And the record company had to say with much chagrin, you've already got it. It's on the B-side.
Turn it over.
Turn it over, yeah.
So how soon did you realize this was all happening? I mean, how soon did you know? I mean, granted, you read it, you know it's a good song. You record it, you love the way it sounds. How soon did you know it was really connecting with the audience?
Well, immediately when we played it at Studio 54.
You just knew it then?
Yeah, we knew it then because the very next thing that happened was that I sang it in my show. I put it last in my show. And the people just loved it. They just loved it. It was not the music. First they loved the music, and then they loved the lyrics, and they heard the lyrics. Forget about it. It became the musical backdrop for so many people's lives.
Yeah. I read somewhere that when you sing it, you never think of it as an abusive relationship, getting rid of the man song. It has different meaning to you.
Well, when I first sang it, I was recording it in a back brace. Because I'd fallen on stage and woken up the next morning paralyzed from the waist down, had surgery on my spine, and had to wear that brace for like 3 months, during which time I recorded I Will Survive. So I was thinking of that because people were going around saying the Queen is dead.
Because you were the Queen of Disco.
Right. And so that wasn't about to happen. So I was able to sing because of that, and the fact that my mother had passed away, and which is something that none of us ever think will survive. I was able to sing that song with great conviction, thinking of those two incidents in my life. And then also thinking of all the people, not just women, who were suffering from unrequited love, but every kind of situation that happens in a person's life. Because, like I say, I wasn't singing this song or relating to this song because of unrequited love. So I knew that other people would relate to it for other reasons as well. So I was singing the song for all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those still the thoughts that come through your mind when you sing the song, or has it changed?
No, I still think of all of those things. I, once in a while, would think of something fleeting about my own situation, circumstance, because I've got to be singing this song for the public. I can't be wallowing in the problems, my own problems in the middle of a song, Besides, when I perform, I'm so uplifted. It's very difficult to be sad about anything.
Okay, ever get tired of singing it?
Never.
Really?
Never. I become 295.5% grade A ham when I sing that song because, the ego just wells up because you know the people are loving it. You know they're going to be encouraged. You know they're going to be empowered by this song. How could you not feel great about it?
Yeah. Were you ready for the, I don't want to say the troubles, the issues that come with great success?
Are we ever? You try to get yourself ready for those things, but you're so busy hoping that they never happen that it's very difficult to be ready for them. But I find that for me, with my faith intact, a firm foundation on my faith in something that is immovable, I am prepared.
Yeah.
I am prepared, yeah.
Now, it's, if I understand correctly, the finding of your faith, or the rediscovery of it, which is probably a better way to put it, helped you get through drugs, alcohol, the partying, all the stuff that we think of as the disco era, that, of course, the Queen of Disco got hooked into a little at the beginning.
Yeah, I did get a little hooked into it. It was only, quite frankly, it was only a couple of years that I was even drinking. Because I didn't drink or smoke, but when you go to the parties, and you wind up with all of these people, and I think probably 95% of the people were doing it because everybody else is doing it. It's what they do, and I don't know when it became our mantra that it's okay to do it because everybody's doing it. I mean, that is the stupidest thing, but that's what was going on. So, you get swept up in that whole thing, but because of my upbringing and because of my faith, there was an inner struggle going on all along with me. This isn't you. This isn't how you do things. This isn't the way you live. This isn't the kind of life you want. This is counterproductive. This is going to take you to where you want to be. You got to pull yourself away from this. You got to pull out of it. You've got to recognize that you have the strength. You have the foundation, and you don't need all this. And so I eventually pulled away from it. But it was difficult because I'm a people person. Yeah. And to me, pulling away from that meant that I was going to be alone. Mm-hmm. And then I realized I'm not alone. I'm never alone. I'm never going to be alone. And that was where I found my strength. Christ is always with me. And I am not alone. And he and I are a majority of two.
Yeah.
So that pulled me away from all of that craziness. And I'm great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I talk to the most well-grounded celebrity, and they talk about having gone through the wild time, there was something they were trying to fill in their life. And usually what they end up finding is it is a spirituality they need, that they need some contact with that. Why do you think that's human nature?
I think that's human nature because I think that God has placed a God-shaped hole in everyone's heart, and nothing is going to fill that hole except him.
Yeah. Okay, now we're strongly spiritual. We have a hit career behind us and stuff. Do the two ever cause tension? Is it this disco lifestyle, the superstardom, the recording world against the religious person, and how do you balance that?
Well, it doesn't cause any problem for me because I have a purpose in it. My purpose is to carry the love and the knowledge of Christ to the people through my music. And it's an invitation, it's an offering. It isn't a beating somebody over the head. It isn't a judgment on somebody else's way of life and where they stand and where they are in their lives, whether or not they're religious or whether or not they know the Lord. It's none of that. It's an offering. It's like I've gone to a deli and I've found this wonderful piece of chocolate cake that you have got to try because you haven't lived until you've had this. It's like that.
Yeah. And
if you say to me, I'm allergic to chocolate. Okay, next let's go on to something that you do like, that you can get into. Yeah. I will go away saying, I sure hope one day they get rid of that allergy and they can really try this because they would be happy if they had this. I know. This would fulfill their lives if they had this. This would make them everything they ever wanted to be if they had this. So I go away and I pray for the person. I continue to pray. It's my conversation, my private conversation with God. Has nothing to do with any judgment of them or where they are, because I don't know where they are. He does. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just a messenger. I bring a message. And if you want to receive the message, great. If you don't want to receive the message, I take it back to the one who sent it, and he can find another way.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. So, okay, career-wise now, you have come full circle. I Will Survive, 30-odd years on now. It's been around. You've toured around. People have covered the song left and right. Yeah. Do you get a thrill when you hear someone else doing the song? Or is it, wait a minute, that's mine?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. I have to say, in all honesty, I am so flattered when someone else does I Will Survive. But I am secretly hoping in an ugly part of my heart that it doesn't make it. because I really do. Of course, I want to continue with the success that I've had with I Will Survive. I do. I have to admit now that I am coming to a place in my life where I can, how can I say this? I can recognize that, young people can come in now and take over this place. It's okay. You can, it's your time in the sun. It's okay.
New queens of disco?
Yeah.
But never a new first lady?
Never.
What do you want to record now?
Now I want to record gospel music.
Okay.
I really want to record my first gospel album. I also want to record a jazz standards album. Yeah, that's something I've always wanted to do. So hopefully I will be able to do the two of them, one right after the other. The first one will probably be a gospel album. I've just recorded a 30th anniversary commemorative version of I Will Survive that will be released along with a gospel song that happens to be called I Will Survive. Completely different song, not a gospel version, completely different song that was really brought to me. I'd received a prophecy in church that God would put a new song in my heart, and I went into, long story short, a record store one day and found this song and immediately recognized that it was the story of my life and have recorded it. So I'm putting the two songs together because I'm thinking, after 30 years of telling you I will survive, it's time I told you how.
Well, on the A and the B side, it'll be I Will Survive this time.
Exactly.
Gloria Gaynor, thank you so much for sitting down and talking. Our pleasure. Gloria Gaynor.
To order a DVD of this or any episode of InnerVIEWS, please visit HoustonPBS.org.